Who taught you how to throw a football? Let's talk about your grip first. How do you hold the ball? The great Kurt Warner, thanks for coming. Tom House, thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
This whole project started a couple of years ago. I went to training camp with the Packers, and I'm talking to Aaron Rodgers. I said, just give me a thought on throwing. He said, all I think about is getting my weight to the inside of my left ankle, the inside of my left calf, the inside of my left knee. The inside of my left ankle, the inside of my left calf, and the inside of my left knee. That's all I think about when I throw. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody talk about that and only that and lead with that in all the years I've thought about throwing. So we started this project about the evolution of the throw, how it's changed, and kind of a quest to find the ideal throwing motion. So we've done a whole documentary on this thing, but it all starts with you.
Okay. No pressure.
This is NFL Films Presents.
A quest is a search for something. We've all been on them. Most of mine involve football. A quest for knowledge, an edge that leads to wins and championships.
Our standards are high. The best of the best are edgy now. They're hungry.
This quest is an attempt to answer a question about one of the most fundamental acts of the game. What is the perfect throwing motion?
The best thrower 50 years ago was Joe Namath. I used to have a throwing sequence of Namath on my wall. 8 throws, bop, 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 bop.
Like a pass in search of a receiver, every quest is a little different. But any good one reaches its destination. In this case, the answer.
This boy threw the best balls I've ever seen in professional football. Trade my ball whizzed through, and it stops right there and said, go ahead and catch me, baby.
But let's not skip straight to it. There's a reason the hero's quest is the greatest story arc in cinema, and a pass in flight is the prettiest shot in the NFL Films archives. The journey is worth watching, and you'll learn a lot along the way.
It's like flicking the booger off your finger.
You have to weight shift in 0.15 to 0.2 seconds to allow the energy to get up into release point, 0.25 to 0.35 seconds later. In other words, you have to get rid of the football in under 0.5 seconds or you die.
Something we discovered early on in our quest is that the throwing motion has evolved dramatically over the years. If you look at John Elway at his pro day, you see how quarterbacks used to throw. More over the top and follow through like a baseball pitcher. Today, that's not often the case. Arm positions, release points, follow-throughs, and so many other things about the game itself have changed.
These guys are so good, the Mahomes and the Rodgers are so good that they can adjust to whatever route, and it gives the receivers the opportunity to change on the fly, and Rodgers can still get them the ball. And then you get the hybrid, the Tom Brady's and the Drew Breeses that have the best of the old and the best of the new.
Throwing the ball with the C as opposed to a U, keeping your front shoulder closed, the little 6-inch step. That bicep as close to your ear as you can.
Tom Brady trained with Tom House and played until he was 45. But the man who was at the beginning of this whole quest may have evolved more than anyone else.
I was holding the ball on the shelf coming out of college, and I was dropping back like this.
I just think he's a really good football player.
Yeah, he is, and he's going to learn from one of the best ever, Brett Favre.
Put her in the old body.
That's a great learning process because I had to watch greatness, and I'm like, why is he doing this and this and this and this? And that's what I had to figure out. What is it about those throws that allows him to do it? It wasn't all arm.
Right.
It's his all body. He's finding an anchor with his foot and then being able to just turn over that and get the rest of his body out of the way.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I got to watch. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm going to try and do that. So every practice, you know, there's like a throw to take away from that practice. Like, oh, that one I could use later.
Aaron Rodgers even helped spark the evolution of one of the other great throwers of today.
Going back to college, like I was so over the top, didn't look good. Like I would even watch and be like, God, why is it? Like I look at guys like Aaron Rodgers, that are throwing it, and they're here, and like everything is so still.
The best thrower of this generation is Aaron Rodgers, and he's talking about getting the weight to the inside of his left ankle. So tell me about that. Is that what you think about?
Throwing, just like so many athletic feats, is all from the ground up. How do we use the ground force to create momentum to throw? You watch my footwork when I'm throwing, and I'm trying to clear my left side, and sometimes I end up like this. We're not ending up like Nolan Ryan coming off the mound like this. This was how I learned how to throw a baseball and a football. On a knee, you know, it was get your shoulders rotated, and there's zero ground force in that. But as I got older and tried to find some cheats in the footwork to still generate the same power, I realized the more I can load up and use the force is I'm jumping off the ground to create the force, and it doesn't matter what my feet do, so I can throw both feet off the ground. How do we harness the power of the ground into our throwing? Because it allows us to throw accurately and with velocity from any different body position. I can throw with just on my right foot and everything spinning around on my left foot ending up over here because I'm generating the force from the ground, harnessing that force to be able to create the movement in my hips and shoulders, and the arm at the last second is just kind of along for the ride.
Watched a lot of Aaron and the foot pop that he incorporates sometimes in his throwing motion. And I started to just work on it, right? And this kind of allowed me to keep this rotating while this was closed off. And I was just trying to create more disassociation between my hips and my torso.
I mean, look, I watch Jordan Love now, and I'm like, that looks like a spinning image of Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, you sit behind a guy for 3-4 years, and you're looking at one of the best to ever do it, you're naturally going to say, how can I be more like this guy? It looks a little unorthodox, but when you really break down the movement, they're generating tremendous power.
Coming up, the quest continues, and a look at the critical change that unlocked the Josh Allen we all now know.
My energy, in theory, goes back this way, while my hand and the ball go forward, so it's...
I've been thinking about throwing my whole life and done plenty of it. One thing I do know, it's a total body exercise. Part 2 of the quest focuses on the science, the kinesiology, and all the different body parts involved in throwing a football.
How do you grip the ball?
See, that's what's funny is you take 32 quarterbacks, you might get 32 different grips, right? I was always just 2 fingers on the laces, 2 fingers off.
I'm on the second lace, and my pinky's on the second one at the bottom, just kind of sticking between there.
As much as to the top of the ball as I can. Terry Bradshaw used to put it all the way at the top.
I am one of those guys, Terry Bradshaw. I know a lot of people talked about him as kind of that first guy that I would end up throwing with the index finger almost on the point of the football.
I didn't have much of the laces, and I squeezed the ball really tight, so a lot of times, most quarterbacks, you'll see some error here. And I don't have any. And I've had guys try to throw it like I throw it, but they can't throw a spiral.
Those laces are there for a reason. Put your fingers on them.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they say.
I'm a believer that less movement will always make you more efficient, and the first place that can start is with your arm.
All the best throwers have always gotten to this position.
Well, Namath would say up and out, like Marino.
Up and out, yeah. Most of the great ones of all time have all gotten to this angle. It's quick, but it's that. It's not that, and it's not that.
I try to take the arm out of a throw, and everybody's like, what do you mean? We throw with our arm. I want as little engagement with my arm as possible, kind of like a club in golf. I want to create all the power elsewhere, and then all I'm going to do with the club or all I'm going to do with my hand is finish.
For me, the whole concept of throwing the football and being accurate with the ball was based on my legs and my feet. In fact, I think the back foot is so important that I jumped a lot of rope. I'd do it on one leg, but I'd do it on my right foot.
Do you agree with that thinking?
100%. I always want to start my power with my back foot. If I push with the inside of my back foot, my front foot's always going to go where my back foot takes it.
For me, it's about that back leg, and then when I rotate, I want to create that disassociation. So once I have all my cleats in the ground, it's about disassociating my front hip and my front shoulder. So as I can do that, I believe everything's going to happen the way that I need it to.
So when you're talking about dissociation, that means we don't want our front shoulder and our torso to open when our hips open.
Right.
We want to be closed. We want to start to open our hips
Yep.
And we want our front shoulder and the rest of our body to lag.
Exactly.
And then it catches up.
That's exactly right. It's that whip. To me, it's about creating that whip. And that's where the Dak dance comes from, right? That's just me doing that over and over to create that.
He does everything off of opening that right hip and then whipping that left hip.
We were doing that in a yoga studio 15 years before that,
exactly right?
And I'd have weights, and I was doing that same thing.
Yeah.
And that was training that hip-shoulder dissociation, dissociation.
The longer he can stay disassociated, the easier he's going to throw hard.
If you think hip disassociation is a bunch of mumbo-jumbo, just ask Josh Allen. His rookie year, he didn't have it, and completed only 52% of his passes. On top of that, he dealt with nagging shoulder pain.
I was so here, and I was very quick with it. My arm was hurting because I was throwing the ball so hard. My second year in the league, met with a guy named Chris Hess. He owns this company called Biometric. The most influential person in my mechanical career of finding out how to do it the right way. And what I found was that my shoulder was basically rotating and beating everything else. My hips, my torso, the RPMs and the torque was putting so much pressure on my shoulder.
Is it all coming together and you're kind of muscling it?
Correct. That's exactly what was happening. I was like already beating my hips. Chris shows you examples of how efficient you should be. And I was like, you know what? In order for everything to kind of like time up better, I'm gonna try to drop my arm a little bit and just slow down this process. And what that got me to do was, again, the disassociation to now, once I start my throwing motion, get my foot in the ground quick, this is going and this is still coming around.
In 2020, after working with Chris Hess, something remarkable happened. Allen completed 69% of his passes, 17% higher than his rookie season. An NFL record for improvement over a 2-year span.
I've always believed that accuracy is something that you really can't coach. Guys can either put the ball where they want to put it or they can't. And Josh Allen proved me wrong on this.
Thank you.
You're rotating through, and then this whips through kind of by itself, not unlike a golf swing.
Basically, like every rotational athlete, it's golfing, it's swinging a baseball bat, of staying on that back foot, and it's this, right? Where I want to throw everything and have this stay back as long as possible, and as it comes through, to be as snappy as possible. It's like a catapult almost, right? Where everything is, all that energy from your body is leaving the hand at this moment. Wherever my target is, I'm trying to get my arm to stay in that direction because I feel like that helps produce all my energy through my hand into the ball. And I developed this thing. I don't know if anybody else does this. I have like this little strike zone that I can see. If you were to like paint a TV screen of what you see, there's like this little yellow spot where if I can release the ball in this spot every time, I know exactly where I'm releasing it, and in order to change the trajectory, I just do this.
You've been like this your whole life, and now, one off season, you're an NFL player already. You say, I'm gonna change this.
Yeah.
When there's 80,000 people and these defensive linemen are chasing you, how do you get it where it's internalized and that becomes how Josh Allen throws?
A lot of reps, a lot of reps. And it's still, at certain times, it's like when you're in the pocket, it's like, I feel like I got back over the top and I'm back too far on my left leg. You have to have certain reminders. Right before I'm going out to the field, when I'm throwing the ball, it's like, all right, I'm not gonna move my left foot here. I'm just gonna throw a few to my equipment manager scopes and just stay right here. And once you get that feeling, it's like locked in, go play the game.
Coming up, we stay locked in on our quest. Who has the most ideal throwing motion of all time?
Red 28 hut. I love the way Elway threw. So tight. And his chest used to just explode to the target. Man, he was so fast for such a big guy.
Yeah.
Part 3 brings us back to our initial question. Who has the perfect throwing motion?
The first quarterback that I really remember just loving to watch throw the football was Danny Marino. It was an iconic motion, one of the quickest that's ever played the position.
Sam Darnold throws the piss out of the ball. When it's spinning, it is like shaking because his spin rate is like so high. It's awesome to watch.
Matthew Stafford the ball just looks beautiful coming out of his hands, particularly when he's winning your Super Bowl.
Touchdown, LA!
Warren Moon, when he would throw the ball, you would literally hear this.
There's not a perfect throw. The perfect throw is completed to your team.
There's such a difference in the guys that played in my era.
Take care, baby.
There's such a difference fundamentally in throwing for so many guys. Peyton Manning. People try and copy what Peyton did. He was bouncing 10 times in the pocket. I'm like, I can't play quarterback like that. Tom Brady, Tom's pocket presence, Tom like standing tall in the pocket, being flat-footed sometimes in the pocket.
That's ridiculous. Once Tom Brady gets comfortable and gets into rhythm, you're in big trouble.
Think about the way Phil Rivers played his fundamentals in throwing. Not the most gifted thrower, but incredible timing and accuracy.
You knew at some point we had to get to Phillip Rivers. 6th on the NFL's all-time passing yardage list, with arguably one of the most awkward throwing motions in the history of football.
Phillip Rivers played 17 years in this league at an extremely high level. As a kid, his dad was a ball coach.
Yeah.
He'd be out there at the field, picking up a ball that was way too big for him at the time, and he'd end up just shot putting it. And so he developed a little bit of this motion that was unorthodox based on that. Obviously, extremely
he
effective,
only threw for
extremely
60,000 yards.
Yeah, exactly, right?
It looks different, but really at the money part of releasing the ball, is he just like everybody else?
I don't know if it's quite as high as you got your hand there, but the way his body was positioned when he threw and where his arm was, it's a little more sidearm, but there's no question he's mechanically very sound.
You have to be able to appreciate his unorthodox style and the way he attacks.
He threw a great ball, a great catchable ball, great accuracy. So I don't know, anyone in their right mind would try to change that.
Read my mind, North. He just read my mind.
Your throw is your throw. I think you can work on hitching and rhythm and body weight distribution, but everybody kind of does it their own way. So you got to be really careful trying to mold somebody into a certain way of playing.
We've seen sidearm throwers have success, even big windmill motions. But all that brings us back to the original question.
Is there one motion that everybody says, that's the Mount Rushmore, that's the way to throw a football? Your thoughts on that?
I think there's always a uniqueness to it, but I always look at Drew Brees.
Blue 80, what's that?
The efficiency, the way that he did it the same over and over and over again. It's the same as the last one. It's the same as the last one. It's the same as the last one. And so that's why I loved watching Drew so much.
Growing up in Louisiana, always watching Drew. He is the epitome of the 3D QB.
Ready, blue 80, what's that?
From the feet to the finish. The guy is so fundamental, so detailed.
Turns out Drew Brees doesn't just pass the eye test. The machines agree on his greatness, too.
I bought my own motion analysis system. The most efficient pitcher in the history of baseball statistically is Greg Maddux. He was 97% efficient. If you took Drew Brees' motion analysis and overlaid it with Greg Maddox's, you can't tell the difference. What Drew was so good at was he was probably the most repeatable when you match footwork with ball release.
Brees is just one of 3 players with more than 10,000 pass attempts and one of 2 with over 80,000 passing yards. Yet his approach to each throw was relatively simple.
If you were teaching a 12-year-old kid how to throw a football, how would you break it down for him?
Your objective is to get the ball from here, point A to point B. So how fast can you get the ball there? You can't throw a football until your front foot hits the ground. The minute your front foot hits the ground, that's what sets everything else into motion. When you start to throw, your hips go first and your shoulders stay closed. If you open up this shoulder too soon, you've uncoiled the rubber band before it's ready, and therefore you're just not going to generate near as much power. When you're tight, you move fast. And now start to think about just taking the ball right to here and getting it out. Up and out, just like you said, Joe Namath, up and out. From there, I'd say, what is your front hand doing? The Tom House version of this is pretend like you got a hamburger right now that you're gonna take a bite of it every time you throw. Right? You don't want it out here, it's right there. And then a balance point. We want this off leg dragging on the ground. And it's like a tripod, right? It provides a better balance, which is channeling all of your energy in one direction. It's going to create better accuracy as well. The release point and certain things can look different. It's hard to say what's ideal other than can you get the ball from here and out of your hands in 0.3 seconds.
After all the talk about evolution and science, the quest for the ideal throwing motion just might come down to what's perfect for you.
There are guys that you look at and just say, man, like God-given talent to throw the football. Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, most guys can't throw it like that. There's a lot of God in that, right?
There's no doubt.
I like watching Pat play. You know, Pat does things that I tried to do when I was younger, and it adds his own flavor to it. That's the beauty in this. The throwing motion has definitely changed. The athletes changed. The information has changed. And we're adapting and evolving sports in general. You got to adapt, evolve, or you're going to be left behind.